Howdy, folks. Welcome back to the podcast. Katie and I are once again grateful for the opportunity to read and hear some of the questions you have been contemplating in your own homes. And we tend to have thoughts on similar topics that you have thoughts on. And so this has sparked conversation in our home. So we thought we'd continue that conversation in today's episode. If you enjoy this podcast, we would love it if you're able to leave a rating or a review on iTunes or Spotify or any platform that you listen to us on. And if you watch us on YouTube, if you're able to subscribe, that's extremely helpful to us, or even hit the like button on the video. That is encouraging as well. We'll get this thing going.
The Now That We're a Family podcast.
So before we go straight into the questions, I want to let you guys know about the 6 Songs of Summer Challenge happening on VotebergMusicAcademy.com. So if you're already a student in VotebergMusicAcademy.com, the 6 Songs of Summer Challenge starts May 28th, right? I had it pulled up here. The last Tuesday in May. Yeah, May 28th. And that's when the first song is released. And this is our 6th year.
Yeah.
Running it, and you have the opportunity to earn $10 and a badge, and you get a special badge. I made it myself. It's a patch, and you get it so Elisha will release the song, your teacher will release the song that you're supposed to learn. You have 1 week to learn the song and post a video of you playing it before the next song releases, and it's 6 weeks, 6 songs. It keeps you practicing throughout the summer, and even if you have 5 kids learning on one account, then they all can win the prizes.
Yes.
It's not like there's only the top 5 win. It's if you do all 6 songs, you win. You are a winner. And, you can earn your money back. Like the money that you've invested in summer lessons, you could totally earn back if you have a lot of kids. So anyways, I hope you guys join us. It's only available, to join, you've got to do all 6 songs. So you've got to join before May 28th. You are not currently a student.
Yeah, and again, like Katie said, we don't draw names from whoever completes the challenge. If you complete it and it's proven that you've completed it, you've posted all 6 songs on the community page, then you get the reward. And that hasn't come back to bite us yet. Last year, I think, was our highest full completion that we've ever had as far as total number of students. And I was kind of second guessing it there for a second. I was like, this is a lot of money to give away to these hard practicing students.
But it's so much fun. Our kids are really excited. This is the first year they get to do it. So anyways, I wanted to tell you guys about it. We're going to keep talking about it till May 28th.
Yeah. I kind of wish that we actually had the video from the first 6 Songs of Summer challenge that we did when we announced the winners. Do you remember what we did?
What did we do?
So this was on Facebook Live, and we don't have our Facebooks anymore.
Oh.
You got dressed up in a ball gown, and I put on the nicest suit that I had, 3-piece suit. You don't remember that?
No.
And we did a big ceremony for it.
Did we? That totally sounds like us.
Yeah, it was on that back porch of our little apartment.
So we did a ceremony on our splintery back porch with the beat up. Yeah. Oh my goodness. We always had the neighbors' babies crawling on our porch.
Yes.
One time, one of the neighbors was drunk and came in on the porch and into our house.
Yes.
That was before I knew who he was. It was pretty terrifying.
Okay,
nice
so I'm going to
though.
jump into a few of these. I thought, this is kind of an interesting conversation that we've had. What do you think about married couples that have separate social media accounts? Should they each have their own account or one joint for both to use together? What do you think?
That's a good question. We've had separate social media accounts, partially because when we came into marriage, we already had our social media accounts, but we both had each other's passwords, and we would both, I would log into Elisha's maybe to message one of his friends, or he could log into mine whenever he wanted. And so we also both had each other's phone passwords, email passwords. We're logging into each other's stuff all the time. So even though we still have a lot of individual things, we no longer have separate social media accounts just because we don't want them. I don't know. That's what I would say. As long as there's no wall between you, I'm on Elisha's computer a lot. He'll borrow my computer. We just don't have any his or hers in terms of maybe a name, but then we access all each other's stuff.
Yeah, that's how we operated when we both had social media accounts. It is interesting because I do think that with new technology comes new need for I guess boundaries, basically. Just kind of okay, what's going to be the safety net? Because you might say I'm never, like for us, a basic rule is like, I'm never going to drive alone with somebody of the opposite sex, right? That I'm not related to, right? So that's like an easy one, right? So you're not giving like a coworker a ride last minute that's a female or something like that. And that's just kind of like an easy standard to have in place. And that's actually been useful a handful of times, back when I was working at different places where that would happen. Coworkers would be like, hey, can you give me a ride? I'm like, oh, sorry. Like, I don't do that. And it's awkward for like 2 seconds, but it just keeps things very simple, I think, when you have those boundaries. But then you think to like, okay, well, what about like phone conversations or writing letters? And of course you wouldn't be pen pals, right? With somebody of the opposite sex. You wouldn't have like a phone relationship, phone conversations, exclusive to somebody of the opposite sex when you're in a marriage. And yet with every new technology, it's kind of like, well, is this normal? Is this okay? That they're commenting privately on like a story that I shared, and then I'm commenting back. Wait a second. Then you need to like, I think, establish some sort of boundaries around that, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, definitely. I think you're totally right. And there have been times where guys have messaged me. Typically, like what's funny is whenever I would post stories of Elisha when we used to run Instagram, I would have his friends message me about Elisha. Yeah. And so that was great. But then there was one time that really stuck out to me where another married man was just striking up a friendship and asking me about like his home decor items, what I should pick and stuff like that. And it was just a really weird thing, and I didn't reply ever because I was like, ask your wife what color, you know what I mean? Like it just was awkward. And it got to a point where I just blocked the other person.
Wow.
I wasn't in a close enough friendship with this other person. We just knew each other like acquaintance wise. And it just,
it wasn't appropriate.
I didn't want to be wondering if this guy was messaging me or not, know? And so
this whole time it was probably like his wife on his account, It was
no,
like,
the situation wasn't ideal.
Yeah. So anyways, I didn't really answer the question. I think that if, you need to be able to trust your spouse, hopefully you can trust your spouse, period. Right. Because no matter how, like, you share passwords, you've got access to each other's technology. Those are great things to do. But at some point, like, your spouse is not going to be within sight of you, or they're going to be, and there just has to be trust. And so, like if it stresses you out that your spouse has their own social media account, then there's probably just more conversations to have in addition to that conversation about them having their own social media account. If it comes to like a trust thing or who are you communicating with? Anyway, so I do think that is one of those things where as technology and applications develop and progress, it's like you need to start setting new boundaries with those technologies. When it comes to the context of marriage, communicating with people of the opposite sex.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had any fear around this because anytime I'm like, hey, anytime I request Elisha for access to something because I need to use it for whatever spur of the moment, it's just like, oh yeah, sure, here you go. And it's never like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, or, give me 5 minutes.
Like, no, I think I left my computer at the office or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, we don't have that kind of relationship, so we have a lot of trust. But obviously, if social media has been a problem, you like get on your husband's phone because he's not there and you wanted to, look up something on Instagram and you see the explore page and you're like, what on earth? Then that might be a good reason to share a social media account. You know what I mean? So there's more accountability or just
or ask some questions. Yeah, just kind of like, hey, how come these were all the recommended, whatever, videos on your home YouTube, page, or how come these were all the recommended accounts when I went to the search area on Instagram? It's a good, good question to ask if there's something that causes concern there.
Oh yeah, and I've totally been mortified when Elisha's logged on my computer to look up something on YouTube and my Explore page pops up and I'm just like, oh my word, why did I watch those videos? Like, why am I getting recommended that? So anyways, it can be a helpful thing. And I am just a huge fan of just deleting social media. Like, if you don't need it, it doesn't need you. Like, just your life will be so much richer without it. I've been so grateful we deleted Facebook. That was so refreshing.
Yep.
So refreshing. I might have a couple like half-baked accounts out there, but I don't know of them. And then Instagram, we went down to one. and then we went down to none. We still have VMAs, but yeah, it's just been a real blessing to not have any personal social medias.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we've lived this. So this question is, any advice for families where the husband works the second shift from 3 p.m. to 11:30? It's been challenging to find a good rhythm for the day. I want to be most productive around the house in the morning when I have more energy, but that's also the only time we have to spend together. If I put everything off until the evening, then things don't get done because I'm so exhausted with 2 little ones. This was also a season where we had 2 little kids. Any tips to find balance? Any tips to keep our marriage thriving when we don't get to go to bed together every night or have the daily alone time with no children awake?
Wow. I feel like, you should answer this question first because you were the wife, the house, keeper in the situation. You were parenting the children when I was gone. You did many bedtimes. You put the kids to bed without me for a pretty good stretch there because I was working over there that time. And so what was this like for you?
Well, that's a good question. What's funny is I do remember a lot after breakfast or whatever, Elisha and I strolling down to the river. We'd go for a walk with the kids. We'd visit, we'd brainstorm, we'd dream. Like, we did really take advantage of that time together. We also did work a lot together. So we would work on our farm league projects before he went to work. So, obviously the kids are a shared passion and interest in project. But also that's when we were filming music lessons for Voteberg Music Academy. We were doing sales calls for Neil Life Vitamins. We were, what are other things that we did? We just were doing a lot. We were starting the podcast, trying to figure that out.
Yeah. Editing YouTube videos and
yeah. So there was lots of stuff that was happening for us during those times when we thought it was bonding to, I don't know, we working on projects together in the morning. Also, we did get up very early in that season, even though you came home late.
Well, yeah. And so
How did we do that?
I do think that, if he gets off work at 11:30, that's tricky because he's probably not home till 12 and then maybe he wants to unwind or something.
You would be home by 11:30. So that was the difference.
Yeah. Because I would be usually done at 11, be home by 11:30. I either would have already eaten or you had food for me right away. And really this was so I was the guy that wanted to unwind, right? Like I was like, I want to unwind. And yet you've been unwinding for, 3 or 4 hours, not unwinding because you'd been working your face off that whole time. But
I'd been by myself.
You were ready to go to bed, I guess is what I'm saying, by the time I got home. And so there was some friction there for a bit. And really, it was so clear to me where it's like, okay, I need to go to bed. And something that was really helpful for me is because up until this point, I would want to get on my computer, watch sports highlights from that day's games and whatnot. And I changed my habit at that point to being on my computer in the evening time to reading a book in bed. And that actually helped me big time go to bed earlier. So even though I'd be getting home at 11:30, we'd be in bed by midnight. And that's when I got a reading light. We would walk to the library on a regular basis. I'd always be getting new fiction books that were really fun to read, but they would also tire me out. Like we all know how stimulating a screen is, right? And so people will do blue blockers or they'll put their screen on nighttime mode and all of that, but it's still just more stimulating to your brain, even with all of those technologies. And reading a hard copy book, I mean, I get I get 2 pages through. I'm like, well, this is fun, but boy, am I tired. I'm ready to go to sleep. And so I think that helped get us on a better rhythm, even though it was still later than preferred. We were able to get onto a rhythm with that. And then again, I don't think we were waking up at 4:30 or 5 or anything like that, but we were waking up before the kids.
Yeah. So I would say for us, and it totally depends on my love language is quality time. And so when Elisha was available, I wanted to be hanging out with him, even though I did very much value productivity. So it has to come down to what you really value, because you're saying if you really value that energy in the morning and that's where you feel your time's best spent, you have to make a decision here, right? For me, I'm a morning person, but I would stay up till Elisha got home because I wanted to go to bed with him. Mm-hmm. And we were very newly married. We're 2 years married and have 2 kids. So I'm very much a newlywed that wants to be there when my husband comes home. And we went to bed at the same time during that season. Elisha was really gracious in that. And then we would get up and we would have our time in the morning. Sometimes we worked together, which was productive. Sometimes we just hang out together. And then as soon as Elisha left for work, that was go time for me. and I just did the house, did the cooking, put the kids to bed at 7:00, and then would work on my computer until he came home. So that was like our rhythm.
Yeah. And like you said, you pointed out, you mentioned it, we had a lot of fun, like you said, after breakfast. So we'd get up, we would do kind of like our quiet time or to get time in the Word, do our power hour, right? Which I don't know if we've talked about our power hour, but basically whenever you're starting a business or you're in sales of any level, because I was doing real estate at this time too, like, you know what your least favorite work is, but it's also probably the most necessary work in your business. It's like the money-making activity. There's that whole concept, what is it, like eat the frog or something like that, first thing in the morning. And so Katie and I we'd set a timer for 1 hour, and we would do like sales calls. We would do follow-up. We would do cold reaching out to people.
You would go drive like to doors and put the real estate like cards, knock on houses.
I know. Yeah. I never liked doing that stuff. I don't know. People
make her skin crawl, but it's like
we needed to do it. And so the fact that we are in that together, there's no way I would have like been doing those hard things, cold calling, people following up, pursuing leads, or just trying to, a lead was awesome, actually, just trying to drum up some leads. And so we would do that in the morning. And then there was this true carefree time after that, because it was, we knew we did a hard thing. So we could, sometimes we'd even like walk to breakfast or walk to a coffee shop, enjoy time with each other, with the kids. If it was, we'd walk down to the river, like you said. And it really was, we'd always have like a couple hours of real carefree time before I went to work.
Yeah, so that was really special.
All right, here's a great question, and I'm sure many parents can relate to this scenario. So I'll read the whole thing. So they felt called to get more involved with their local church. So they were invited to join a home group that had other families in similar life stages as us. I really hit it off with a few of the moms and felt like the new friendships were a blessing. For the first few months, things were really great, but then our toddler started getting hit in the back of the head by other toddlers when we weren't watching. Then we all started to notice a lot more defiance and sneaky behavior from one of the older kids in the group. So not their kid, but from one of the older kids. We have noticed different parenting styles between us and the new friends, which has been frustrating at times. So questions. That was the context. I don't know if I needed to read all that. But
no, I think it was good context.
Yeah,
that was great.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you.
How do you handle conflict between your children and somebody else's child? And then what do you do when you have developed a friendship with a family and start noticing a lack of discipline that is negatively impacting their kids?
Their kids or your kids?
Well, they said their kids, but I think,
okay.
And so that lends to
your
impacting
kids.
Your kids as well.
Yeah, so I think once it starts affecting your kids, that's when it becomes more your problem. At this point, it sounds like it hasn't. So like I would take steps, I should say, if I was seeing behavior rubbing off on my children or our children, right? That's something that's like a non-negotiable for Elisha and I. However, if it's just their kids being annoying and naughty and sneaky and deceitful, like keep an eye on your kids for that kind of behavior. But at the end of the day, that is the freedom we have in Christ, is to parent the way that the Lord's leading us to parent. And you can't like force your parenting style on anyone else either. I think this is pretty common in home group scenarios where you start being like, why is that kid so annoying? And why is no parent dealing with it?
Yeah.
And parents might think that about your kids too, or our kids. What would you say though?
Yeah. Again, I think the age of the kid has a huge, that plays a factor in this factor. And then, so I think I agree with everything that you're saying, depending on the age of the kid. So if there's a kid that's maybe 9 or 10 or 11, well, it actually doesn't really matter the age of the kid, but it's like the stage in life that they're at, and they are unruly and they're sneaky and they're starting to raise up a posse to follow them into, foolishness. Then at that point, you're kind of like, hey, just so you know, I saw that your kid was, the neighbors told them to stop throwing apples across the fence, and your kids were still throwing apples over the fence. I just thought I'd let you know. People have done that with me.
People have done that with us. I don't think we've ever done that with anybody else.
Yeah, again, like you said,
we want to be that person, but it's intimidating.
Yeah. So again, I don't know the context of everything. So I don't think my kids are angels. I love my kids, but I'm well aware of their proclivity or just their general propensity towards foolishness because they are children. Okay, so even though I'll see my kids here in the evening time, we're all sitting, we're reading the Bible, they're reciting scripture. I'm like, they're so great. I also know they get around other little kids, and they'll be throwing the rotten apples at the neighbor's, window if they're not, held like unless they're like very managed by adults, right? I'm not saying my kids like are always naughty, but I know they're
capable
of doing that,
yes.
right? So anytime somebody's brought a concern, they're like, "Hey, I saw your kid." I'm like, "Oh." I'm never like, no way, my kid would never do that. Like, you don't even know my kid. I'm like, yeah, okay. Like, thanks for telling me. And I go and I talk to my kiddo, right? Getting back to your point, I don't feel the need hardly ever. I use that scenario because that's happened to people have come to us oftentimes. I don't know if I've ever once done that with any other parent and their kids, just because I'm like, dude, it's their kid. Like,
it's more like we see the behavior and we go to our child and say, hey, did you see how so-and-so was doing that? Do you think that was the right thing to do? No, we never want to see you ever doing something like that.
Yeah.
That's kind of how we tend to do it.
Yeah. And again, I mean, at some point, if you're close enough with people, maybe it is your responsibility. But it's like, it's their kids. I've got my kids to worry about and to parent. And because here's the deal, like, because they're children, I know that like children, like I said, folly is bound in the heart of a child. And so I'm never blown away when other children, so like even in the context of this question, like nothing that you mentioned, toddlers hitting your kid in the back of the head or kids being deceitful and sneaky, I'm just going to come out and say like, that's going to be in every church home group that you're a part of, like with families. Like that certainly is the case at our home group. We've been a part of numerous home groups.
Like our toddlers have hit kids in the back of the head and you're like, what on earth? Like you're teaching... Sorry, I keep cutting you off. You keep going.
I'm grateful. I don't really have like a very linear thought here. So anytime you jump in, I'm grateful. I'm like, maybe I can actually think of something to say while you're talking.
No, I love where you're going though. But I do feel like with children, foolishness is bound in the heart of every child. And so we're trying to socially train our children too. So like when our toddler hits someone in the back of the head and it's like, whoa, they've never done that at home. But then it's like, well, there hasn't been someone their exact same size that had the toy that they wanted.
Right.
And so now we have to train that. And so it's a good opportunity to do that. And now if another kid comes and hits my kid in the back of the head, then if I'm there, I'm going, oh, hey, we don't hit in the back of the head. Mm-hmm. You just kind of can do that. If the child just keeps wailing your child in the back of the head, then first tell your kid to go play somewhere else. And if that doesn't work, then I would maybe find the mom and be like, hey, I don't know what's going on. I think, my kid might have made yours mad, but he just keeps whacking him in the back of the head. I don't know. I've never had to go to a parent. I'm usually just like in that situation, able to tell the toddler like, oh, we don't do that,
Yeah.
And their mom's probably grateful for it and everyone's fine.
Yeah. And again, going back to the scenario of like the 7-year-olds throwing apples at the neighbor's, house or whatever they might be doing. I guess if I'm far more prone, and I think I have done this, to just like tell the kids to knock it off than I am to go get their dad. Does that make sense? Like, yeah. If something's actually like vandalism or again, like at our church, they're running up on stage, right? That's just kind of like a probably pretty typical church rule. It's like, hey, no kids running on the stage. There's all the sound gear, the microphones and instruments are up there. So if I see, obviously my kids are running on the stage, I'll be like, hey guys, no running on the stage. But if there's like somebody else's kids wrestling on the stage, we'll be like, "Oh, guys, we gotta get off the stage." I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm the annoying dad doing that. Cool. And if they don't do anything, then I'm like, "Hey, I'm not gonna like go find the head elder and be like, hey, discipline these kids or find their dad or anything like that." I guess, yeah. I don't know. I don't know what the actual right answer is to this scenario, but like I do think different parenting styles, different leniency levels for discipline is going to be a part of any home group that you're a part of. And then also the development of different children and their families, like their 4-year-old might be, a terrorizer, and then like the parents figure it out and he's a great 6-year-old, right? Mm-hmm. Or they might, like, I know that our kids have gone through seasons where it's like, hey, why are you being so mean to people? And you kind of like dial it in, and they have a really soft heart, and then they're less that way. And so I do think that it's, I don't know. I'm not giving a very, squared away answer here by any means. And I do think the older the kids get, this is what I was going to say. If it's like, 10, 11, 12, or getting close to like that junior high age, maybe at some point it's like, yeah, you need to go talk to them because like the consequences are a lot higher than, right? If they're truly hurting somebody, because like kids wrestling, 4 and 5 year olds wrestling is really not that big of a deal, right?
Yeah, and
somebody's going to get
too
hurt,
rough and someone gets hurt,
right? And at our community group, at least 1 or 2 kids cry every time we're there because they're playing a game, somebody gets hurt. And was it somebody being a bully? I don't know. Maybe at one point, maybe it was, but oftentimes it's just an honest mistake or kids being rough and having fun. So I don't know. Yeah, but I do think go to the second thing. If you're starting to be around a lot of families and their lack of discipline or the way that they're raising their children is having a negative impact on your home and your culture, I think that's where you can take steps, right? That's where you are, I think, obligated to start finding some separation between that family, being like, okay, well, I don't want you, if every time your kid comes back from hanging out with those kids and they've got a bad attitude or they're saying things you don't want them to say, or they talk about things that they saw or that they showed them on their phone, you're kind of like, well, that's an easy, like, well, we're not going to hang out with those kids anymore, I think.
And we have done that too, where we've straight up been like, we aren't hanging out anymore. Mm-hmm. It's over. Or in this context, we aren't hanging out anymore.
Yeah.
And we've just had to draw those clear lines for our family. And, yeah. And it's not like you need to go up to the parent and be like, hi, just so you know, you get to choose, I guess, in the relationship, if it's worth it to you to go talk to the parents and discuss this, or if you would rather just withdraw from the situation. So I think that depending on the relationship, depending on the closeness, depending on how you would think it'd be received,
yeah,
that can be done.
Again, I fall way on the side, and maybe I got this from my dad, my family. I don't know where I got it from, but it's just kind of like, for the relationships that really matter to you, it usually like all works out, right? like in the sense that you don't need to have some big council and like, the meeting of the minds and get all the parents together and establish. I think that usually like makes things worse, honestly. And I think that like if you just do general encouragements to each other and being good parents, I don't know. It usually works itself out.
It'll work out. So our daughter has 4 under 4 and is getting depressed, depleted, and so weary. How did you do it? She has a supportive husband, and I try to help 3 to 4 times a week. How did you keep them engaged during the day? We live in Nevada, and it's very hard to get out once the heat hits. So, excuse me. You sound like an incredible mother, and you really want to help. And I think that there are a few things coming to mind, and obviously I don't have all the context for this, so I'm just going to kind of like tread a little bit on eggshells here because I don't really know what's going on. So there's a lot of reasons that your daughter might be depressed, discouraged, and weary, but I would say that you don't want to actually be enabling. And I see this a lot where mothers, well-meaning mothers and mother-in-laws, they step in to help their daughters who are drowning in motherhood. But the problem is not that the daughters are actually drowning in motherhood. They're drowning in avoidance of it and trying to kind of manage it out here. And what I mean by that is maybe by you helping 3 to 4 times a week, like what is your daughter doing with that time? And I'd really encourage you to just kind of think through that, because if it's allowing her more time in the day when her kids are there to then when you aren't there, be on her phone, then that is just sabotaging her motherhood. That's the biggest number one reason I see women depressed, depleted, and weary is because of social networking. And it has nothing to do with the children. When a mother is, and I'm not saying that there aren't cases where a mom is totally overwhelmed with just the kids, but when she's able to be so like pouring into her children pour back to you. And we just did an episode a couple weeks ago on me being in a really overwhelmed season. And the funny thing was about that is it had nothing to do with the children. Homeschooling the children, teaching the children, that fills my cup so much. And I love it. It was these peripheral activities. And so I can't say, what's exactly going on here, but I would say cut out, if at all possible, all technology from the kid's life. Encourage your daughter as much as she can to get rid of any technology that she's capable of getting rid of. And then I would maybe say, help out one time a week. And it's like, this is my one time where I'm going to come over, I'm going to take all the kids, or what do you want me to do? Do you want to make all your meals? Do you want me to help clean your house? Do you want me to, how can I bail you out this one time? And let her develop systems the rest of the week that start serving her, because you being her safety net is kind of inhibiting her from developing her own flow. She's building a life where she always needs to be bailed out by you. And that's a really unhelpful place for her to be in and for you to be in. So I would just encourage you to concentrate that time. And then, how do you keep the kids engaged all day? I totally get that. Like the kids, this week, we had kiddos that had colds. It was raining outside. We weren't going to send them outside. So we went and bought embroidery hoops and embroidery thread. And our 7-year-old, 6-year-old, and 4-year-old have embroidered for what?
Hours
and hours every day. We've been embroidering cloth napkins because we use cloth napkins in our home. And they are just, I am blown away at like the 4-year-old stitches, and they're doing the lazy daisy stitch and the back stitch and the chain stitch. And it's like, they feel so good about themselves. They're creating something. And I sit there and, get a rethread needles and take out stitches and all that. And it's like, that's one thing. Elisha taught the kids fiddle lessons tonight. He does that every evening. Like it's that whole concept of like teaching someone to fish, right? You're teaching him the skill.
Yeah.
And so I would encourage you, even with that same concept, having your daughter have that concept with your children. What time is she putting in that's teaching them to do something independently?
Right.
And then not just like masking the symptom, but like it takes more work up front, but like give them a skill. Give the children lots of skills. And then the other thing is, how are you teaching your daughter how to fish? How are you teaching her to get better instead of just helping her and bailing her out and potentially, having that risk of enabling? How are you teaching her to be more efficient with making her meals, or be more efficient with scheduling her time so she has a 2-hour nap time every single day where she just gets time for herself to rest with no children? How are you doing that to give her your life experience so she's becoming more efficient and better and more fulfilled and having God's perspective on this work she's doing instead of always being drained? Sometimes it is physical. So she might need, a 2-hour nap in the middle of the afternoon while all the kids nap.
Yeah, and if that's the case, then once again, the phone can be the detriment to what she actually needs.
And I'm not saying maybe she doesn't even have a phone, but I would always start there.
Right. It is actually crazy, Katie. You said so many things that I was like, wow, you are so right. And I can't speak from a mother's perspective. I can only speak. Did you know that? I can't speak from a mother's perspective. But it is crazy how everything is so stressful and it's draining and it's taxing on you when you're trying to keep it. What's the language you use? But I visualized it. I was like, you're so right. Like when you're kind of trying to manage it from out here, when you're kind of like, well, I want to do that. I want to do that. I want to kind of get through that. And it all wears on you. But when you actually lean into it, when you embrace it, when you're like, this is the thing that I'm going to do right now, it ends up giving back to you. And that, I feel like that can go into so many categories of life, into parenting for sure, into marriage, into just general work. And every time I have the kids that for whatever reason, like if you're running errands or whatever, you have a free day and I resist. And I'm like, and I do the whole like, oh guys, like go play or send them outside. And I'm trying to listen to a podcast or I'm trying to do something on the computer or whatever. I'm just trying to do something on my own. It is the worst time spent, right? It's the worst when there's there's that conflict of like my time is split like that, or my mind is. But then when I finally make the decision, and I've gotten better at doing it sooner rather than later, be like, oh, I'm going to go out with the kids and we're going to actually get on our hands and knees and weed the garden. It's life-giving. And they are stoked out of their mind that you're down in the garden on your hands and knees, weeding the garden with them. And similarly, if you're in the house and you actually build Lego with them, like if you color with them, and if you get them set up for, and like you said, many of these things are skill building. So you're actually teaching them to fish, like you said. And every time I do a 20-minute lesson with one of my kids, that's another couple hours worth of practice for them. If you want it to be right the next day or over that next week. And same goes when you teach them how to color, when you teach them I guess how to build different things. And that is rewarding. And I think it is really, and I think, there are people that do this. I think that is the big, whenever, I don't know, I want my kids to like have something in their hands, to be busy with their hands, right? When I see them holding a book, they're engaged. When I see them coloring, when I see them, doing the, not the crochet, the embroidering. Yeah, exactly. Knitting, obviously practicing their instrument, outside even working, they are more fulfilled. And it's like when their hands are empty, when they're just looking at you, and when they're staring at a screen with their hands empty, it's taxing on everybody. And I don't know, just coming from, you said so many good things there. So it's like, I wanted to relive everything you said. Cause I was like, this is so good, but everybody heard what you said. So just amen to what you said, because that is a true, I think a true conundrum for many parents. And I'm anticipating it being a conundrum for you and I. You want your children, your adult children, to thrive, and you want to see them soar and go beyond where you've gotten to in life. And yet, so often you just see it happen time and time again. Your help ends up hurting because they're not learning lessons on their own, right? And the most obvious one that we all point to is the financial, aid that parents will give to their kids. And it's keeping them from working hard. It's keeping them from forming good personal habits, good financial habits, good spending habits. And so like that's that age-old example that we see. But yet I think parents will do it with their time too. They'll be like, oh, we'll take the kids. And it's really actually not allowing the kids their adult children to establish themselves, as a family.
Yeah, I haven't seen it be super ideal. And I'm sure that there's some situations where it is, but looking in, I've usually seen it stunt the growth of the mother and just the fulfillment. You know that fulfillment of the child that the child has when they get to do something. Sometimes we take the fulfillment out of the mother's role as well, by making everything so fast and so efficient and so actually easy. And so it's like by putting in effort to make a meal instead of heating up a TV dinner, like fulfillment, that gives back. Even though it takes more time, it gives back. Whereas putting something just like real quick on the table, it takes away from you somehow. And it doesn't make you feel good about yourself. And so anyways, that's just, and that quote that we were referencing, I think most of you know it, but it's like, give a man a fish and he eats for a day, but teach him to fish and he eats for a lifetime, or something like that. And so how are the older women investing into the younger women and teaching them to fish? I would just really encourage that. And again, I do not know the whole situation. And so maybe you do need to be there a lot. Maybe your husband does need to be there a lot, but that could potentially be happening with the husband as well, where she just has too much help.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways. Okay. So I have one. Well, okay. I've got a few questions in here. I'm just going to throw all together here. This one says, I would love to see a typical homeschooling day, like actually in real time, and how your kids interact with each other and you during school. And so she goes on to say her specific situation. You have kiddos that are totally my ages and stages, and we don't want the children online in an environment that's just totally public. We just have not felt comfortable with that. And so that's why we stopped vlogging when we felt that conviction. And so in the Get It All Done Club, I do have day in the lives of homeschooling. Not a lot of them because it is a big deal. We also don't want our kids to feel like they have to, perform for a camera, but we have done those. I do around one a year. And so in the Get It All Done Club, I have a day in the life of a first grader. And then in the homeschooling course, I also have some day in the lives of homeschooling where I'm actually, real time doing it with the kids. And maybe this fall, I'll throw another one in there. The kids like to do them. So anyways, that is one question. Another thing is, where are all the Now That I'm a Mother YouTube videos? Those are also now in the Get It All Done Club. Again, the children were in a lot of those. So you mentioned here, you're like, there were just like meal prepping ones and cleaning ones. And we just wanted to take our children more offline for their privacy's sake. And so we took those down and put them on in the club. My mom, she's getting ready actually to do a Q&A with me in the clubhouse this month. And she was just telling me on the phone tonight, we were talking about it. And she's like, I was looking at all the questions that your gals in the clubhouse asked, and I was looking at the feedback that they were giving each other. And you have some wise women in there. They give each other great advice. And I was just so encouraged by that.
That's cool.
Totally a side fact. But I feel so safe in that environment, sharing our children and sharing our home. And so that's where all that stuff's going to stay. As much as I love you guys, I don't like everybody else.
Yeah, it's not our audience that we're worried about.
No, it's not you.
It's just that anybody can access it when it's on YouTube, or iTunes. Or I guess video's not on iTunes, but...
Sorry about that. Okay, Elisha, I have a question for you. A podcast on how to train the sitter to handle a brood of littles would be awesome. We have 3 boys, and we've gone to dinner 2 times in 3.5 years. These children are 3, 2, and 5 months, so super close together. How can a sitter feed them all and put them to bed?
Yeah, well, it's funny because Katie and I come at this, we approach this slightly different, I think, because you can tell me if I'm totally off here. So when we've been blessed with great babysitters, but I've always wanted it to be a great experience for the babysitter. So it's like, I want the house clean when the babysitter gets there. I want food pulled out and prepared. I want the kids showered because I'm like, well, I want them to want to come back, right? And I'm not saying that you don't want it to be a good experience for them, but your parents taught you, because you did a lot of babysitting, right, growing up. And your parents taught you, it's just kind of like, hey, it's the full meal deal. Like we're full, you're full service when you're the babysitter. Like you go, you take care of the kids, you clean the house, you prepare the food. They really empowered you, and I think equipped you to go in and take control of the situation. And so I think you naturally expect that from the babysitter. Like when you're hiring a babysitter, it seems like in your brain, you're hiring just to take care of all of those things, not just watch the kids. And obviously that's been the case with all of our babysitters because they're all very capable ladies. But I don't know how you'd go about training a sitter. I do know that something that was really helpful early on when there were some babysitters that we didn't have much of a personal relationship with at all is that the first couple times we'd hire them, you would stay home. Okay. So maybe I'd be at work and you'd hire them to come over for a couple hours in the afternoon, and you would kind of use that time to get some housework done, to work on your computer, but you were very much around. And so you got to hear how she interacted with our kids, and you got to see if she was on her phone the whole time or anything like that. And so I thought that was an extremely good move too. Yeah,
you can see how overwhelmed that the babysitter gets with things, or if she's totally handling it just fine. If someone's crying and the baby's crying and all that, I am able to pop into the house and be like, here, let me take him and bounce him. You could get the other 2 kiddos food or something. So then they can see if they're up for it. Honestly though, just the better your kids, we've honestly had really great babysitter experiences. 1, because we do have incredible babysitters and we have for date nights. But 2, a lot of babysitters have told us, wow, your kids are so easy to put to bed because they're on such a schedule. They know what to expect. And so if your children are, they know what manners are expected of them at the meal table. Again, your kiddos are really young here, but they go to bed at the same time every night and they just kind of have their flow, then it's easy for the babysitter to come in and do that. So it's maybe not so much as training the sitter, as training your children. If you have consistency and rhythm, then it's going to be easier for the babysitter. I will say, with the 5 kids, it has hit a level, especially with a baby and the 4, where I'm just bless the babysitter's heart. Yeah. Just all I could say is pay them more money, pay them well so that they want to come back. Elisha does a really good job with that. I feel like all our babysitters want to come back, which is a big blessing. And always ask how the kids were so that you can talk to the children afterwards if they need to be talked to. You want them to respect the babysitter. And but I would just say it's kind of, you throw them into the deep end a little bit. It helps if you know that they've watched other kids or they've been around big families. That gives you a lot of context for how comfortable they're going to be juggling all the children. Yeah. And again, this is something that I think some of our babysitters have naturally done this. They were comfortable saying if one of our children was unruly or disobedient, but not all of our babysitters have been comfortable doing that. So we've needed to make them comfortable, to be like, hey, how did it go? And
And then they're like, oh, it was fine. It was fine. You know, it was all good. And they left. And it's like, we talked to the kids and the kids would be like, well, no, actually, like, you know, so-and-so was really naughty, or I was really disobedient. And then the next time we talk to them, be like, hey, they, you know, sorry, they said this. And we really want you to be able to tell us if the kids are not obedient, if they're naughty, because we need to be able to discipline that. And we don't want you to have to put up with that. You know, that's not necessarily part of the deal here. So,
And something too is just letting them know, like, hey, call me if, you know, the baby is crying and won't stop, and we'll come right back.
Yes.
Or, you know, we haven't ever had a situation like that, but I want the babysitter to know if someone's acting out or if someone's crying or things just aren't going well, call us, we'll come right back. No worries, you know,
yeah.
and just have them be comfortable. And sometimes we'll get a text, you know.
Yeah.
We've gotten that a couple times, especially when I'm nursing. It's like, he's getting kind of fussy. It's
But
like,
it is,
okay, we'll
I
cut
tell
it
you
short.
what, I bless our babysitters' hearts, because we are into that territory. I feel like 5 kids is entering into that territory of like,
Little kids.
yeah, 5 young children, where it's becoming quite the commitment for babysitters. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways,
Any more, Katie?
well, not really. I
What
think
does that
that's
mean?
good.
Okay.
I think that's good. Those are the ones that I had off the top of my head.
Those were good ones.
And then I feel like it's getting into kind of more dramatic stuff here.
Right.
Oh, okay. This is an easy one. How did your parents instill in you and your siblings the adventurous side of you? And practical ways could you share on the earlier years, 9 and under?
Oh, okay. Nice.
So I wrote down a few things.
Let's hear it.
So leading by example is the number one thing. When your parents are adventurous, you think it's cool and you want to be adventurous, especially in the ages 6 to 12. You just want to do what your parents do. They're your heroes. You think of peer pressure. Everyone talks about peer pressure on kids and how kids just want to do what their peers do. But you know, like the strongest, I'm going to put in like air quotes, peer pressure, when your kids are 6 to 12, it's the parents. They want to do, like, you're their hero to them during that stage. So like really leverage that. We did polar dips very early on. That's a huge part of my family's culture. And I remember being so little, I had just taken off my dress and was just in my undies. We had all girls in our family, so we were probably too comfortable in just our undies for too long. But I polar dipped because we pulled over on the side of a road on a road trip, and my dad dipped in this freezing cold water, this glacier snow melt. It's the Mackenzie River, you know, and sisters.
Yeah,
this
wow.
freezing. And I jumped in there and wanted to do it too. I couldn't even swim, and just dumped under the water in the shallow part. And I was just like, yeah. And my dad's like, yeah, that's awesome. And I remember just thinking, this is the coolest thing ever.
Nice.
And it just became a big time family culture thing after that. Now I'm a baby and Elisha polar dips with the kids.
Well, you do it. Come on.
I
Don't
do
sell
it
yourself
every
short.
once in a while, but like, man, I've gotten soft in my old age. Something else my dad would do, like, I remember he paid me $10 to swim across this stocked fish pond. He was like, hey, anybody wants $10 to swim across the fish pond? And again, I was really little. I just learned to swim, and I swam across the fish pond for $10 because it was a good way to make money. And it's still, I could just picture the fish in front of me and nipping at my feet, and I was so scared.
Wow, that'd be stressful. How old were you?
So scary. Like 12.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe a little older, maybe 10. I don't know, like young, maybe 10.
That's better. Go with 10.
Let's lower the age. No, I do think I was pretty young though. Cliff jumping, we did that as soon as we could swim. We'd go jump off rocks. And I remember I did my first bridge at 11 at Elisha's parents' house.
Yes, I remember that.
And that was crazy. We did this like railroad trestle bridge. It was pretty low.
Yeah, I mean, maybe 30 feet or, yeah.
20 maybe.
20,
I don't know. It wasn't super high, but the concept was
Yeah.
pretty cool. And, you know, when I was 5 years old, my dad, we did our first 1 mile run, and it was so cute. You know, he did that with me and got the badge. And I know some parents, like, they send their kids on fun runs, but my dad ran the whole thing with me and cheered me on. And I just remember it really stuck out of my brain because he's like, okay, you see that lady up there? I don't know how long it was because adults were doing it too. And he's like, let's go see if we could pass her. Let's go, you know? And
Nice.
I just felt like everything that we did, Daddy was right there doing it with us. And then as we got older, I remember my mom said, I really want to push myself more and take more risks. And so she would get out there and do all this stuff. And that really, it still inspires me when I see the things that my mom pushes herself to do. And so, I don't know. I just think if it's something that you do, it will become a part of your family culture. If you're adventurous as parents, your children will be adventurous.
Right.
And obviously physical risk was big in our family for a family of girls. We didn't know any other girls that were like as risky as we were, I guess. And then my brothers ended up a little crazier.
Yeah.
They got a little, like, few more broken bones with them.
Yeah. What one generation does in moderation, the next.
And so, yeah, I'm not saying that, like, it has to be physical risk, but because this conversation was adventurous, I think a lot of, like, adventure too was just like, we do lots of new things, and we just had to adapt very quickly to the situation. So,
yeah,
you know, like, we're going to move in here. We're going to do it in 2 hours. We're going to help this person do this project. And, like, we're going to all come in and do this project. And so just that sense of adventure is in, like, oh, it's a new situation. Awesome. We love new situations.
Yeah.
And we love doing strange new things that other people, it makes them uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Like, that was just something that was a part of our family culture. So you got to embrace that as a parent, and your kids will just follow right behind. You won't have to try too hard with them.
That's awesome. It is. I feel like especially when the children are young, it comes down to the parents. You really get to set the tone. You get to, I don't know, when you're at the park, it's so much easier just to sit down and, like, watch your kids play, and you see them light up when you get on the monkey bars with them. And that just goes into any category, right? Like leading out in their family runs and getting in the cold water.
Yeah, you mentioned that anytime we would go to the park, my dad would play freeze tag or set up an obstacle course and then time us on the obstacle course. And he would do it too. And, like, we just went to the park the other day with my dad. I think we just talked about this on the podcast.
I don't know.
But, like, the whole time we're all on the walk, he's, like, throwing the football back and forth. They're playing keep away with a bunch of the kids, my older siblings and our children. And just playing around on the park. He just loved to play stuff and have a good time.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah.
And my mom was super gung-ho. And so,
right.
They're just the deadly duo.
Yeah. That was the best. I just loved going on family walks, being able to hide. You know, you run up ahead and you hide, right? And then you scare them. And then we'd always bring the football, and my dad would do football plays with us as we're on the walk, you know? So, yeah. You get to do so much as the parent. You have so much control. Like, it's literally like you have so much influence over the culture. But you can't just say it. You command it. You have to do it. You have to lead out.
Yeah. Because your kids know. And it's not like telling your kids to get out of their comfort zones. You have to get out of your comfort zone. So whatever that is for you, it's probably bigger than your kids. But they have to see you getting out of that.
Yeah.
And then they'll get out of their little one.
That's a good point. I like it.
Okay, that's it.
All right. Folks, thank you all so much for listening. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.